on the application of EES Roman numeral 3 LP regarding conditional use application or applications for the proposed development of the Ardrossan farm. My name is Bill Bola. I am the appointed hearing officer for this proceeding. And this evening we will commence, the applicant has rested, and we will commence with the other parties' testimony and evidence if we can. Who's going to proceed first? You two, Mr. Rice and Mr. Ardrossan, we're going to...
I have one witness, and I believe we're going to proceed first.
Okay, great. Then, barring anything else, any other housekeeping? Anybody have any concerns? All right, we're going to proceed. Mr. Ardrossan, with your witness. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Ball. Before I proceed, I have one exhibit I was going to mark P1, but then I realized that could stand for proponent instead of protestant, so what is your pleasure?
Okay, your client is the Taxpayers Association?
Yeah, yes, Radnor Taxpayers Association.
Why don't we call it TP1?
TP1? Okay. With your permission, we'd like to call Daniel Malloy. Mr. Malloy, would you stand?
You do solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
And state your full name and address, please.
Daniel E. Malloy.
Mr. Malloy, I'm going to show you what has been marked as TP1 and ask you what it is.
This is a copy of my resume.
Okay, and what is your occupation?
I'm the president of Yerkes Associates, an engineering firm with offices in Westchester and Rosemont.
And do you have a degree in civil engineering?
I do.
And are you duly licensed or a duly licensed professional engineer in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania?
I am.
Mr. Bola?
Yes.
The applicant is willing to accept Mr. Malloy as an expert in civil engineering?
All right, do you wish to ask a few other basic questions, or if there's stipulations to that, are you fine, Mr. Ardrossan?
As long as can we stipulate that he is admitted as an expert, be admitted as an expert in civil engineering, and also with respect to residential developments in this township?
Right, any objection?
No.
Okay. Mr. Rice, any objection?
I'm just wondering what that means.
I'm not sure I know either.
And residential
I
development.
mean, as a civil engineer, he's going to be qualified to render an expert opinion about developments in this or any township.
The only reason that I raised the issue is because we have a particular density modification issue here that is part of his expertise, and I was going to question him about that, but that's why I put it in here as that. That's the
Okay,
only
well,
reason.
I have no problem with the fact that he has experience in that and therefore
Right.
is expert in that. The question whether what he's going to be asked is relevant and material to this application is still out there, and I'm not sure that.
Right, just as I think someone else tried to offer a professional with several categories of expertise, I think that a planner was competent to testify about planning things, and an engineer is competent to testify about engineering things. I may not qualify him as a residential expert in Radnor Township. So, Mr. Rice, you have no objection to his qualifications to testify as an expert and render opinion as such in civil engineering?
Correct.
Okay. Do any of the private parties have any questions or concerns as to the qualifications of this gentleman to so testify?
None here.
Very good. All right, then I will find that Mr. Malloy is qualified to testify and render opinion as an expert in the field of civil engineering.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Malloy, are you familiar with the property which is the subject of this hearing?
I am.
And have you reviewed the conditional use application for density modification at the site?
I have.
And in preparation for this hearing, have you reviewed documents which have been submitted as exhibits in support of this application?
Yes, I have.
And in particular, which exhibits have you reviewed?
The plans that were submitted, there were a couple of documents from Aqua and the Sewer Authority. I forget the exhibit numbers
Okay.
that I also examined.
The microphone, please.
It's on.
It is on. And have you been present at previous hearings on this application?
I have.
And did you observe firsthand testimony by the applicant and several of its experts?
I did not attend the first meeting, but I did attend the subsequent meetings.
Okay. Have you personally reviewed the notes of testimony from the September 30th, October 17th, and October 30th hearings?
Yes, yes, I have.
And are you familiar with and have you reviewed the current requirements of Article 19 of the Radnor zoning code regarding density modification?
Yes.
Now, did you review the plans with respect to the township's requirement for proposed roads, roadways, and rights-of-way?
I did.
And what did you find with respect to the road widths and rights-of-way and the applicant's depiction of those rights-of-way?
They don't comply with the township's subdivision and land development code. They are undersized.
And can you be a little more specific as to what you saw?
Well, the right-of-way is below what the township code calls for, as are the road widths. There's one road that's designated to have curb and sidewalk, but the other roads do not have curbing, which is also required.
Would it be helpful to the hearing officer if we put maybe the survey, the plan up on the screen maybe?
It's fine if you wish to.
I think we should, just so you might be able to point out,
Sure.
with your permission.
Thank you.
Mr. Bowler, maybe we can even shorten this process. The applicant has testified that they're not all of the required width, and we would stipulate that they're not.
Well, I understand that. He's only given one answer. I don't know how much longer he's going to be on that issue, but we'll let him go and then object to the questions as they come.
Not objecting, just offering to stipulate.
All right, very good.
Appreciate the stipulation. What page, Mr. Malloy, what page, I believe that's MT, is that 16,
I had 19 open.
19? And what page are you, what page is on the screen now?
I'm looking at page 19.
Oh, okay, fine. Would you, just for the record, point out that which you found?
This road here, which only is partially shown, Newtown Road is across the top, and the private driveway leading back to the homes off of Newtown Road, Atterbury Road is off to the right. So there's a proposed to be a public road. The plans call for it to have a 50-foot right-of-way and a 24-foot wide cartway. And the cartway is correct under the township code. The right-of-way is not. That should be 60 feet. And then there's a side road designated as Road B at the bottom of the plan, and that's shown as a right-of-way of 33 feet with a cartway of 18 to 24 feet. And again, the cartway at 24 feet is fine, 18 is not.
And during your review, what did you find with respect, under the same issue, with the curbs that were presented on the proposed plans?
Only one road is designated to have curbing. All the other ones are shown to not have curbing.
And what will be necessary if the applicant goes forward?
Well, under the subdivision and land development portion of the code, curbing is required.
Okay. And what about the proposed use of private roads?
Well, there are a number of private roads and driveways shown on the plans.
Right.
There are 2 instances where it's noted that there are existing public roads.
Can you point those out?
Bear with me.
Sure.
If you turn to page 13, it's showing the driveway opposite, or the proposed road. The existing driveway across from Abrams is pointing to an area that shows 2 locations where it says existing public road.
Okay. Any others? Or-
No, they were the only 2 locations that I saw that.
And did you find anything with respect to street frontage?
Well, there were a number of lots that do not have frontage on a street. They're isolated, they're by themselves.
In particular, did you find anything, well, I mean, do you have, can you point any of those out?
Well, there's the property 1-2
Right.
that's located up here.
I'm sorry, would you point that out again, sir? Okay.
That's 1-2?
Yes. And then, I believe it's 4-7, 4-6, and 4-5 are similar.
Okay.
And then there was one along Darby Paoli Road. Uh, 5-5.
And how about 5-4?
5-4. Yes, 5-4 was similar. It's located here.
Okay. And bear with me one sec. I guess while you're up there, does the Township Code provide requirements with regard to the delineation of floodplains?
Yes,
And the
it
eff-
does.
And their effect on the computation of gross density?
Yes, the ordinance calls for either the FEMA floodplain to be utilized or the calculated 100-year floodplain.
And has the floodplain been delineated properly as far as the floodplain conservation district?
Objection. Calls for a legal conclusion, not an engineering conclusion.
No, I think it calls for an engineering conclusion. Overall,
The plans note that the FEMA floodplain lines were used, and they were recently removed with the latest edition of the FEMA maps in 1999.
Right.
But the code, as we just discussed, points out that in the alternate, a calculated 100-year floodplain.
the code in this instance is the zoning ordinance, sir? Or the
Yes.
SALDO? Okay.
Saldo, I believe.
It's Aldo.
SALDO, okay.
Now, did you review the proposed plans and the application with respect to the utilities requirements of the density modification development?
Yes.
And what did you find?
Well, they do show the sanitary sewers are running through the property. I did not see water lines. And then some of the other utilities are not in there, gas, electric, but the sanitary is shown.
Okay. I'd like to call your attention to page 3 of MT 16. I guess you're looking at 16? That's the exhibit?
He had been referring to 19.
19, yeah, I believe it's 16. I think the record, we should
Oh.
get that clear.
So let's straighten that out.
First,
MT
Is it 19?
19
Is
is
the
the impact
impact.
study, the traffic.
Right.
impact
Okay,
study,
so the witness's testimony thus far has not been about MT 19,
About MT 16.
but MT 16. Okay, very good. Now we're looking at
Oh.
page 3.
page 3, the section titled General Notes.
Yes.
Okay. Bear with me one sec. Note number 14, when you reviewed the plans, note number 14, could you take a look at it and tell me what it means to you as an engineer?
No, I did not understand what it meant.
Okay, and that is the note that would you read it?
Sure. The proposed common open space land may not be separately sold, nor shall such land be further developed or subdivided. Unplotted areas that are not part of the proposed common open space are to be held as investment property and may be subdivided into parcels for that purpose, but may not be used as residential lots without further conditional use and subdivision approval.
Okay. And number 17, I'll call your attention to the one regarding topography.
Yes.
Did you review that note?
Yes, I did.
Did it raise any questions in your mind?
The only thing that jumped out at me was the date that the aerial photography was taken. And that does coincide with what I saw on the property next door, the quarry parcel, where that still shows the quarry in existence, and the quarry was filled in probably 10, 15 years ago. So it raised a question about, if there were other areas that had not been updated.
Okay. And then note number 20, with regard to the wetlands issue, were there any issues with that note?
Again, it was the date, but, 2007 did not, after doing a little more research, 2007 did not seem.
Okay. With regard to, are there any other issues that came to mind when you reviewed this plan that you might want to summarize for the hearing officer?
The one thing that there was a table that showed rights-of-ways and road widths. There were a couple of instances where depending on what phasing was being utilized,
What, can you, for the record, could you point,
Oh.
what page are you?
well, on this
on?
case, it's on page 3.
Okay,
But it broke out some of the various right-of-ways that I pointed out a little earlier, where that makes it a little confusing.
they were variable rights of way, is that what you, the widths were variable?
Yes, the right-of-way is variable, and it just, in a couple places, it says plus or minus. So it just added some confusion.
Okay. And anything else that,
I don't believe so.
okay. Just one last question. Can we assume that the issues that you raised tonight are ones that would have been raised during a review when you served as a township engineer?
Yes, yes, they would have been issues that were brought up.
Okay. I have no further questions for this witness, Mr. Bola.
Very good. I think what we'll do is we'll take questions from all of the parties on that side of the fence so that the cross-examination would make sense and not break it up. So, Mr. Rice, would you like to go next? Do you have any questions? No, we're going to take all of the questions from this side
Oh, okay.
first. And if you're not ready, I can take some.
No, I have a
Okay.
couple questions.
All right, great.
Mr. Malloy, just to try to clarify some of your testimony, the issues that you raised regarding right-of-way, road width, sidewalks, curbs, et cetera, those issues typically come up during the land development or subdivision process, correct?
They're in the Saldo, yes.
Okay. And the subdivision ordinance says for sidewalks and curbs that they're necessary only when required by the Board of Commissioners or required by the township.
Yes, that's correct.
So they're in there only if it's required at that stage of the proceedings, right?
Well, we're not at that stage yet, but
Right. But you were asked a question by Mr. Edelson. The question was, would you have raised these issues in your capacity, I guess, as prior township engineer during the density modification conditional use process? And you said yes. But isn't a conditional use hearing much like a special exception? Those engineering details typically get hashed out during subdivision and land development, and not in front of the zoning hearing board and not in front of the hearing officer, correct?
well, normally, but we're talking about road widths, which, should be addressed at this point in time, because that's going to change the plan. It's going to change the setbacks and the distance that the homes sit from the proposed roads or driveways.
And the road frontage issue, is that you didn't reference any ordinance requirement. Where is that required in the township ordinances?
I don't know that it's specifically stated that way, but the front yards are referenced to roads, so the setback is from a road. So I'm not aware of any instances where lots were created without fronting on a road.
Aren't there any flag lots in Radnor?
Yes, but they have access, they front on a road.
Typically a pole
Yes,
of
20 feet.
20 feet. Okay. So these lots which you listed, and you said there's no road frontage, are you talking about public road or private road?
In those cases, I didn't see either. I saw a driveway.
Okay. And you talked about utilities also. And again, you identified the sewer line, but there's other utilities aren't going to be on a set of plans that go in front of a zoning hearing board or a hearing officer, are they?
Typically not.
So that's township engineers' obligation, and the professionals, once the first step, the zoning is in place, then the land development, there's a lot more details that would have to be put forward, correct?
Yes.
Have you ever been qualified as an expert witness before?
Yes,
In testifying in Radnor Township or somewhere else?
in Radnor.
In front of the local zoning hearing board?
Yes.
I don't have any other questions.
Thank you. Radnor Conservancy, any questions?
No questions.
Very good. Ms. Kreitler? She here? Oh, you're here for her. I'm sorry. Ms. Morgan, any questions?
Sure. No,
Good evening. Good evening, Leslie Morgan, 12 Farm Road.
Good evening.
Mr. Malloy, hello. I didn't get a copy of your resume. Is there a copy that I could have with me when I ask my questions? Thank you. Can you briefly describe your tenure in Radnor Township and the different positions you held?
I started in 1983 as the Assistant Director of Public Works. I became the Director of Public Works 2 years later, and in 2002 became the Township Engineer. So in that in-between time, I was the Director of Public Works.
So I'm not so good with math when I'm standing on my feet. How many years did you work for Radnor Township?
28.
In the capacity of different
Of
jobs, but
three.
always as an engineer? Or using that?
Well, as the Assistant Director of Public Works, I was not a licensed engineer at that time.
Okay.
So 1985, I became a licensed engineer.
So from 1985 to 2011?
I was a registered engineer.
Okay. So my big thing, I represent myself, just a taxpayer, just to give you a little background, is I'm very curious on your experience with, we are soon to have 18 density modification plans approved in Radnor Township. Did you work on some of those?
You mean a total of,
Yeah, we have a total of 18.
Okay.
That, well, let's forget it. We have 17 that are alive and well. We have about to be 18. I'm not counting this one. I'm counting another one that's a small one that's percolating along. Did you work on?
I was the Director of Public Works for all of them, I believe. But I worked with the former township engineer in doing the reviews, but the former township engineer did the bulk of that.
Are you familiar with the subdivision named Brook Farm?
Yes.
I'm allowed to go into his experience, aren't I, Mr. Bulla?
Objection.
Well, we did ask for questions about experience earlier, and no one had any questions. And so we've already qualified him as an expert in civil engineering, so I'm not sure I know why you need to go back into that.
Well, I'm very curious about the common open space allocation and how it pertains to 17 other density modifications within Radnor Township. And there's been a commonality through the zoning code on how that allocation has been designed. And since he was here for that, I thought it was very interesting, his background, that I might question him on.
On those other land developments?
Mr. Malloy just testified that he wasn't the engineer during that time.
Right, not only that,
Okay.
but what would the other land developments have to do with this one?
Well, I guess just as a layperson, I might not know exactly what you're speaking to, but there's been a very strong commonality that goes with the zoning code, and that's one of my points that I'm trying to make.
There's no facts in this record yet
Yeah,
of what those 17 are.
yeah,
And unless a witness can testify in detail, which would take a long time to do it properly.
I'm not inclined to hear
Okay.
the history and background of other developments. My role here
Okay,
is determine whether this application does or does not meet the requirements of the ordinance.
okay.
So it has nothing to do with what happened anywhere else. It's this application I'm considering. I'm not going to go into 17 other density modification applications.
Nor am I asking you to, but I think that there's a difference of opinions, and who knows who's right, that they've all been the same, and this one is different.
See, I don't even know what you're talking about,
Okay,
frankly.
so forget that question. Let me ask it a different way. I'm trying. Let me ask another question on the plan. You said that you didn't see anything else on the conditional use that they're asking as a variance. Aren't there some variances or waivers that they're asking for on the length of road on the ridge here, Dan?
I believe you're correct.
And also some emergency service? How does that play, to your knowledge as an engineer, with our code on this application, on the length of road and the emergency services?
Well, the code was written with a certain road length for that purpose, to allow emergency vehicles to respond in a reasonable amount of time.
Okay, and how does this not comply?
Well, as you just reminded me, there are some roads that are longer than what the code calls for.
Is this the only one, in case I'm missing one?
I would have to take a look at the plans again.
Which one are we talking about? When we say the one,
Oh, which page?
the court reporter doesn't know
Okay.
what you're referring to.
Which application you mean? Mr. Rice?
Which road?
Okay.
You said some roads are longer than the code requires. And again, I think we're speaking about Saldo? Mr. Malloy?
It would be Saldo.
Right, okay. And we did hear about that from the applicant. They did mention that they were going to seek waivers from those requirements of the
Okay.
Saldo.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I believe it's only the one along the ridge. I'm sure there's a road lettering to it. I don't recall what that is.
The one that's been called Phase 3.
Phase 3, yes.
okay.
For the record, that's on page 28 of MT 16.
Thank you.
Am I allowed to ask general questions pertaining to this application with respect to the density modification code in Radnor Township, Mr. Bola?
Yes.
Okay. Here's my question as I stumble along. On this application of the main tract, if you could put the plan in front of you, there is 311.5 and change acres. My question is, it has been said, I think their engineer testified, that the by right, which is 2 acres, would be more intrusive than the density modification on the entire site. Do you have a comment on that? Or how we would know? How do we know? That's what I'm trying to,
Well, I'm confused by the word intrusive.
okay. The impact ecologically, that is what was testified to, I believe. The impact ecologically, without, we didn't have a by right plan to compare to, but
Right.
maybe you're an expert, so.
Well, I mean, the purpose of the density modification in the ordinance is to allow you to position the homes in clusters so that you can protect some sensitive areas. So you don't get into the cookie cutter where everything's on, in this case, each property is on 2 acres, and they may or may not impact sensitive areas. So that was the purpose and why density modification was created.
Was there other purposes that it was created?
I think that was the core reason.
Was it also to shield the houses from the view of the commuters and the general public, I guess?
Objection?
Well, if you know the answer to that.
I don't know that that's part of the reason.
I'm afraid to ask about any other applications because you worked here so long. Was the outcome of the projects that you worked on under density modification, was the result that the commuters didn't see the houses because they were clustered behind?
Objection?
Overruled.
Mr. Bowler, we don't even know what she's talking
I
about.
don't either, but listen, again, I'm trying to,
I appreciate
I'm
it.
trying to allow her to get her questions out. I know she has some questions in there, and I'm trying to allow her to get her questions out. I'm not understanding, I don't know if you can
Here's-
answer
Well,
them.
I assume when you mean the commuters, you mean the people driving on the existing roads?
Yes.
That,
Do we have a copy? I have a copy that
Well,
I...
wait, you've
Of
got
the
a
actual
question
code.
on the table here, and I think
Okay.
the
I would
gentleman's trying to
say,
answer.
you know, the several that are coming to mind, the majority are further back and away from the existing road that they would front on, but I wouldn't say they all are. I mean, I'm thinking Cornerstone is fairly visible, but, you know, there are a number that you have to drive into the development to see the homes.
Right. Do you have a copy of the 280-90 with you?
I do not. I do.
Now you do.
Can I ask him a question?
Please.
Okay.
That's all right.
I have a plan.
Luckily, John's ready.
Oh, I do have one technical question. On the plan, on number C, in the 280-91, common open space, it says the common open space shall be contiguous to the development and not be separated by the track from existing roads. And it says the common open space shall be land which is appropriate and in suitable condition for recreation, park site, school grounds, woodland conservation, floodplain, and other recreation or open space purpose. In terms of the plan. Can I have that, Bob? I just want to, there's the page. I'm just going to put this here.
Get my code.
Dan, see this piece of common open space?
Are you talking about the green
Yes,
portion?
that's the green. I believe that's common open space. This, Mr. Schneider, I believe you told us that this was put here, but I had an arrow drawn from one of your earlier testimonies that it was supposed to be for down here or somewhere else.
Just to make it clear, I haven't testified.
Okay, I think you asked one of your experts.
Okay.
And they said that this was not really for this. It was for somewhere else. When in conditional use, when going through the density modification plans, is that part of the conditional use process, or is that in saldo, when it's being asked to be somewhere for some other reason, if that's clear? This piece is supposed to be for down here, but it's put here.
Well, I don't fully understand, but I know that they've been phasing this project,
Right.
which is unusual. I'm not aware of any other density modifications
Nor am
in
I.
Radnor that were phased like this. So I don't know how to answer, or I can't answer that question, which piece goes with which parcel, because I've never worked on a plan that was phased as they applied.
What plans have you worked on in Radnor Township while you were employed that were phased?
Objection.
He just said he didn't
Oh.
work on
He
anything.
Didn't work on
He
any.
didn't work on any.
Right.
He said density modification. I wonder if there was any by right phases. He said density modification phases.
It's still an irrelevant question.
Okay. That's all I have.
Sustained. Okay, thank you. All right, Ms. Price?
Thank you.
Mr. Price not here? Okay. Go ahead, cross-examination.
Yes, I have just a few. Mr. Malloy, were you here for both nights of testimony of Mr. Fiorello?
I was not.
Okay. Did you review his testimony?
I did.
Okay. Did you review his testimony on, just a second. Oh, how did I flip that off? Just a second. I believe it's page 1. Yes. Beginning on page 133, going through the next 4 or 5 pages relating to waivers that were noted on the plan, proposed for the development, the reason for the waivers, and the testimony of Mr. Fiorella that if the waivers weren't granted, that the plans could be made to comply with the requirements.
Yes, I did read that.
Okay. Did you do any independent review to see whether they could be made to comply?
I did not.
Okay. So you have no basis for contradicting Mr. Fiorella's testimony that they could?
I'd have to take a look at his testimony to see where I'm contradicting, if I am contradicting.
I'm not saying you are. I'm
Okay.
saying you don't have, just noting that there are waivers isn't a statement by you that the waivers couldn't be, that the design criteria could not be met if the waivers were denied. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I have no other questions.
Very good. Mr. Edelson, do you have any redirect?
No, I don't.
Okay,
I apologize.
that's right. Reminder to everybody to turn your phones off.
Good question from a lawyer.
It's my law professor.
All right, do you have any further witnesses?
No, I don't, not for this evening.
Okay, you will have another, as I understand, you'll have a
Yes,
witness.
we will. Mr. Bowler, we will have another witness, which hopefully we will present next week.
Okay, great. All right, let's move on. Is the township prepared to proceed this
I
evening?
have one witness tonight.
All right, very good.
Amy Kaminsky.
Good evening. My name's Amy Kaminsky. I'm the traffic engineer for Radnor Township. Kaminski. Oh, we have to share.
It might be easier if I stand up and you can use the desk.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Kaminsky, could you just state what your position is and your business address?
Sure. I'm a traffic engineer for Radnor Township. I'm appointed by the board, and I work for Gilmore and Associates, and my address is 65 East Butler Avenue, Suite 100, New Britain, 18901.
And how long have you been the traffic engineer for Radnor Township?
I believe a little over 2 years.
And are you licensed in any states?
Yes, I'm licensed in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. And I also have PTO, which is a professional traffic operations engineering license, which is a national license.
The applicant would stipulate that she's a expert in traffic engineering.
Pardon?
All right.
Yes.
Mr. Edelson?
We have no objection. We would stipulate so.
Okay, any of the parties?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, any of the parties, other parties? Have any questions about qualifications? No, the other parties to the matter? Okay. All right, so do you need to inquire any further into her background, Mr. Rice?
I do not. I'm just offering Ms. Kaminsky as a expert traffic engineer, and I do have a CV, her CV with me, which I would like to mark as, I believe it would be T2.
You're asking me?
Well, I'm looking through my notes. I believe I marked T1.
The TIS, I believe you mentioned.
The review letter by Ms. Kaminsky dated August 26,
Right, I recall it.
2013.
I recall it.
So the CV would be marked as T2.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
might need one, too.
I have an extra one if you need it.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Kaminsky, you did issue a review letter dated August 28th, 2013. It's been marked as T1, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to ask you about that a little bit later on. I want to go to the testimony that's already been given by the applicant regarding traffic by Greg Richardson. Have you reviewed his testimony?
Yes, I have.
And have you also reviewed the traffic impact study that was prepared by Mr. Richardson and TPD?
Yes, I have.
With respect to his testimony on August 29th, I had asked him some questions about his traffic counts and his use of what he called PennDOT factors in deciding to add 5% to traffic counts because of seasonal variations. Do you recall that testimony from reading the transcript?
I do recall that.
Okay, it's on, just for the record, it's on page 8, 9, and 10. There's a discussion regarding that 5%.
Which hearing date transcript? Mr. Wade?
October 29th.
Thank you.
Ms. Kaminsky, is there a PennDOT standard or a publication which accounts for seasonal variations when you can't get traffic counts or you at the correct time?
Yes, there is.
And what is that?
That would be publication 601. The most recent publication is from September 2013.
Okay. And the counts that were done in this case were done when schools were not in session, correct?
That is correct. They were done during the summer.
And could you describe what that publication does in terms of traffic counts and the use of that publication?
Sure. The publication is a way of taking counts that were done during what we might call typical or average times of the year, and allows you to provide factors for, excuse me, factoring raw counts so that they are more in an average weekday, time of day, month of year. So for when the traffic counts are taken, you would look at this publication and you would look up the different factors so you can make some adjustments to the raw data that you prepared. And that would allow you to come up with an average daily traffic or to adjust your manual turning movement counts.
And that publication is published annually, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And when was this particular publication, what's the date on it?
That one, it's September of 2013 was the most recent published.
Okay.
And it's actually called the 2012 Pennsylvania Traffic Data Book.
Okay. And is that what you believe Mr. Richardson was referring to?
I'm not real sure if that's what he was referring to. I would imagine that he would have been. However, he did make a comment about 5% as a general variation. So I think that did not come from the PennDOT publication.
Okay. That I believe was his opinion
Okay.
From the hearing. But with respect to the traffic counts and your opinion as to the traffic impact study, do you have an opinion as to whether or not that needs to be updated or revised in any way?
I believe that the traffic count should be updated in the traffic impact study. This particular site location has quite a few private and public schools around it, and there are several universities in the area that I think are enough in close proximity to the site that it could skew the data that wouldn't necessarily correlate to the Pennsylvania traffic data counts or the factors that you typically apply.
Do you know what schools are in the immediate vicinity or might contribute
Sure.
to traffic?
I actually did prepare something that you could possibly bring in as an exhibit. Just a second. It's right here. I've, on the exhibit, which I believe, would that be 3?
Well, let me mark this as Exhibit T3.
And I just wanted to note that these are not all the schools. These are just some of the schools that I was able to determine that were in near proximity to the Ardrossan site. The Academy of Notre Dame is very close,
All right,
Ithan
excuse me
Elementary.
one second, Ms. Kaminsky.
Oh,
Just
I'm
for the
sorry.
sake of the record, I'm going to identify T3 as a document prepared by Gilmore and Associates entitled Schools, Universities Near Ardrossan Site. Very good. Go ahead.
So one of the universities is Villanova University, Eastern University, Cabrini College. And then there are several public schools that are nearby, elementary school, middle school.
I'm sorry, you just went so fast. You had
I'm sorry.
Villanova, Eastern?
Villanova, Eastern University, Cabrini College.
Ms. Kaminsky, let's do it this way. Let's start at Villanova, which is at 1 o'clock
Okay.
on this map, and then let's just go
Okay,
down to
sure.
to 2 o'clock,
one.
and we'll go around the Ardrossan site. So Villanova on this map is at 1 o'clock. What is next?
Agnes Irwin,
And what kind of school is that? Do you know?
that's a private school.
Okay. High school, grade school, elementary?
I
Do you-
believe it's high school. I'm not certain. It's all years? I stand corrected.
All right, as a result of some comments from
outburst.
the members of the public, we understand that Agnes Irwood is grades 1 through 12, private school.
Okay. Continue on, Ms.
Okay.
Kaminsky.
The Academy of Notre Dame, I don't know what grades are in there. Ithan Elementary, that's pretty obvious.
Okay.
Delaware County Christian School, I don't know where that is, if it's kindergarten through. Culbertson Elementary, Episcopal Academy, Devereaux Gateway School, Wayne Elementary, Radnor Middle School, and St. Catherine of Siena.
And then,
That's a private school.
okay, and then at the top, to the right
Oh,
of
I'm
St.
sorry,
Catherine
yes.
Siena, there's 3
Yes.
more.
Eastern University, Cabrini College, and then Valley Forge Military Academy is, all 3 of those are located just north of the map,
Okay.
off of, I believe, Eagle.
Do you know whether these are all located in Radnor Township?
I don't think so, but I'm not sure, actually. I'm not sure where the township line falls, but I would say that even if they weren't in Radnor Township, they're near enough to the site that they could potentially alter the traffic counts based on seasonal variations.
Okay, so it's your opinion, or is it your opinion that all of these could contribute to traffic loads in that area?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, it
Okay.
is.
Is there any other reason why you believe the TIS should be updated, other than the identification of the schools and potential school traffic? Do you have any other reasons why you believe that there needs to be new count and an updated report?
The site distances that were identified in the traffic impact study didn't cover every driveway taking access to the roads. The TIS identified 5 accesses on Newtown Road and 5 accesses on Darby Paoli. And although they are existing roadways or driveways, it would be my recommendation that a site distance analysis be performed. I typically require that of any land development project that comes in, just to be certain that site distance is adequate for their driveway.
Now, the 2 roads we're talking about are both state roads, correct? Newtown and
Correct.
Darby Paoli.
Yes, they are.
Mr. Richardson, I think, testified last October 29th that he looked at the site distances on Newtown, but did not include, and included them in the report, but did not include in the report any site distances for Darby Paoli. Do you recall that?
I do recall reading that, and I believe there were 4 driveways or roadways that were, that site distances analysis was performed for Newtown Road. However, there are 5 accesses, so I'm not really sure which one wasn't looked at.
Okay, but there are no, I think on page 30 of his testimony, he said did not do a report, or a report had not been generated. It would be your view, I assume, that would have to be updated with a new study.
Yes.
Okay.
In connection with this conditional use proceeding, or it's at subdivision land development?
Well, it could be a condition that the hearing officer could attach. It would be something that I think what I heard Ms. Kaminsky say, that she would require at subdivision and land development. But
So if there's a problem, it probably needs to be identified and
So you'd like
resolved.
to identify it early on?
That would be my preference.
Okay.
the other issue that came up with the counts and the reliability of the counts was the status of the bridge on Darby Paoli Road. Did you investigate that?
I did.
What did you find?
My understanding is that it's supposed to be open by Thanksgiving.
Okay.
This Thanksgiving.
Yes.
So if that is open by Thanksgiving and school, I assume, will continue to be in session, what would be the best time to do updated counts and an updated traffic study?
I would recommend maybe waiting a week after Thanksgiving, but obtaining those a couple weeks prior to Christmas break or the winter break. Sometime in mid-December,
But it would be done as part of a land development application.
it could be.
Have you reviewed the general layout of the proposed plan?
I have.
There, and Mr. Malloy testified about the cul-de-sac length. In particular, I think a lot of the references regarding cul-de-sac length have been to the road that comes off of the new public road, comes off of Newtown Road, and then terminates on the backside of Lot 5-1. Are you familiar with that?
I am. I don't have it visually in front of me, but I can answer questions regarding it if you'd like.
We have a provision in the subdivision ordinance that limits the length of a cul-de-sac to, I believe, 800 feet. Is that right?
Yes, it does. It limits it to 800.
What's the reason for a limitation like that on cul-de-sac length?
My understanding is that, and my reasoning for limiting the length would be because you can have a tendency to have motorists start speeding down the roadway, and then you have a situation where you would need to do some kind of traffic calming measure in the future. So the longer your road is, the more likely it is that motorists may end up speeding down the roadway and exceeding the posted speed limit.
What about emergency access for the people that live along that road?
That would be another reason that you would want to make sure that you limit the length of it. My preference would be to have a secondary access to that cul-de-sac anyway, regardless of the length.
Whether
Because
it's 800 feet or 1,800 feet?
Correct, because if there's a situation where some of the houses are cut off by the emergency, then there needs to be a secondary access so that they can come in and provide services to all the houses.
Okay, and on the plans that you have in front of you on the front sheet, there is a connection from that cul-de-sac, which services lots 3-2 through 3-10. There's a connection to lot 5-1, which fronts on Darby Paoli. Do you see that connection?
Yes, I do.
What kind of a emergency access would you recommend in terms of construction, gates, bollards, flashing lights? what would be the typical emergency access look like?
My preference is to have some kind of bollards to keep motorists from entering from that particular area, and then potentially some grass pavers so that you still have that, the grassy verge, and yet you still have the ability for the emergency vehicles to reach that access easily.
So would you,
With the bollards, gating wouldn't be necessary.
but would you recommend that be any kind of alternative access for any of those new homes? Or just limited to emergency access?
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding. Are you looking for a roadway connection?
Now, my question is, with an emergency access,
Okay.
would it just be limited to emergencies? It would not be used as a cut-through for anybody that's living on that road?
I would have no opinion on that. That would be up to the township and what their preference would be.
Now
My greatest concern is making sure that we don't have situations where the cul-de-sacs are greater than 800 feet, which could potentially need traffic calming, and to ensure that emergency services have two entry points into the area.
Okay. With respect to, and I want to ask you a little bit about your review letter of August 28th. Have you reviewed the traffic impact study with respect to Radnor Chester Road and Conestoga Road? And if so, what's your view as to, and I think you had a comment in your letter regarding the need to do some additional study. Could you comment on that, please?
Well, I would hope when the traffic counts were obtained in the future, as I had recommended, that there would be some consideration to any kind of queuing that's occurring out there. The traffic impact study, I'm not really sure, but the level of service, what that is I believe that there was a discussion about level of service prior today, so I won't go into that.
It was.
But the level of service that came out of the traffic impact study doesn't reflect my own personal assessment of the intersection when I've been through that area. So I would wonder if perhaps the traffic counts were vehicles served rather than the demand vehicles, meaning served vehicles are the number of vehicles that cross the stop bar during the green light, whereas demand are those vehicles that are still stacked at the intersection and don't get through during that green phase and have to wait through a secondary or third phase.
Okay, paragraph 10 in your, in Exhibit T1, your comment was during the, you were there in August, during the PM peak hour, and you observed substantial southbound on Radnor Chester queues and delays. That's your personal observation among other
Yes.
times you've gone through that intersection, is that correct?
That is correct.
That intersection, is there any area out there where traffic improvements could occur?
There, on the southwest corner and potentially the southeast corner, there aren't historical buildings close up to the roadways, so those are two areas that could potentially be improved. However, that southbound approach, you wouldn't be able to widen because there's two historical structures there. So I don't have traffic counts, so it was hard to determine what improvements would help the situation out. So I believe that's something that could be, discussed or analyzed once we have the revised traffic counts.
Okay, so physically, you're saying two of the corners have physical constraints with buildings?
Correct.
And what about the other two corners?
The other two appeared to have some green area. There was a little bit of area that could potentially be widened. I didn't look into the right-of-way that's available out there, but because they are open areas, there may be a potential to widen on those approaches.
Okay, just on your August 28th letter, I want to ask you about some of your comments. And
Okay.
recognizing that Mr. Richardson has not responded to this formally yet, which he testified to, but intends to, one of the comments you made on page 2 was crash data investigation. Your comment was that there needs to be a crash analysis for a continuous 12-month period. Why did you recommend that that be done?
Well, the data that was collected was analyzed on a month-by-month basis, and typically, we look at mitigation measures when we have thresholds that are exceeded with crash data. So if we have, I believe it's 5 reportable crashes in 3 years, we tend to try to look for mitigation measures for that. And when you quantify them on a calendar year, you don't necessarily get the grouping on a 12-month time period. Now, that's not to say, I didn't have the data, so I couldn't look at it in detail, but that would be something that they would need to do. And the report was also missing the non-reportable crash records.
What, was there a reportable crash records?
The reportable crash records were provided, and a
Okay.
reportable crash, I think you've already gone into that, is that right?
And the non-reportable was not?
Correct.
Okay, but that's available at the Township building?
Yes, it is.
In the police
And
department?
they may already have it, yes.
Okay. Your paragraph 10, I believe we've already touched on, that's Conestoga Road and Radnor Chester Road. Paragraph 12, there's a discussion in your review regarding 2 intersections which you describe as do not follow conventional traffic control, Darby Paoli Road and Newtown Road, and Darby Paoli and Brook Road. Could you just comment on that and explain your comment in terms of what may need to be done at those intersections?
The intersections right now don't have a stop sign on one of the approaches. And when you come to the intersection, and if you're not familiar with the roadways, you would look to the right or left and see a stop sign on one approach, but not on the other approach, which would be confusing. You would anticipate that it would be an always stop, and yet it's not.
Is this a T intersection?
It is a T intersection.
Both of these intersections?
There's actually 2 of them, yes.
Right, okay.
And so I would imagine that that came about from years ago when there were less traffic volumes, that the majority of the vehicles at that intersection were moving in one direction, so it allowed for more efficient operation of the intersection. But as time progresses, you need to look at the crash data. You need to look at, possibly look at either an always stop at that intersection, or you may even want to run signal warrant analysis to determine whether or not a signal needs to be constructed.
And the procedure for doing that would be, assuming there's an updated traffic impact study, there would then be, what, some consultation with PennDOT over this?
Yes, after you've looked at the crash records and looked at the always stop analysis and the traffic signal warning analysis, then there would probably be a discussion within the township. And at that point, if it was determined that one direction or the other should be taken, meaning always stop or a signal or nothing, then you would have a discussion with PennDOT with your findings.
So as I understand it, I'm sorry to interrupt you. So as I understand it, you're not opining whether it should be changed. You're simply, your opinion
Investigate.
is that it needs to be investigated to
Yes.
determine whether it needs to be changed.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And again, we're talking about 2 PennDOT roads, so the township can, I guess, recommend and opine all they want, but it's ultimately going to be up to PennDOT in terms of this with the township's participation.
Correct.
And the applicant's participation.
That's correct.
I don't have any other questions for Ms. Kaminsky.
Okay, very good. And again, what we'll do is we'll take questions from the opponents and then allow a cross-examination by Mr. Snyder. So, Mr. Edelson, do you have questions of Ms. Kaminsky?
Just briefly, a couple of questions, Mr. Bola. Ms. Kaminsky, the traffic study that was presented by the applicant and then your subsequent comments referred to spot checks. What is a spot check?
Refers to spot checks?
That
I
you-
don't
You
remember.
recommended that spot checks be done once the schools reopened, I believe, because the study originally was done in the summer, and I believe that you recommended that spot checks be done once schools.
I don't recall using that language. That may have been
That may have
the
been
their language, yes.
Okay. Is
But
there
now
such
I
a
understand
thing-
what you're asking
Is there
for.
such a thing as a spot check?
Yes, a
What
spot
is it?
check might be used to determine whether or not there was a percentage variation. And if it was of such significance that you determined that the traffic counts were taken at a time that they don't accurately reflect the peak hour, then you might request the person to go out and perform more traffic counts.
Do you recall recommending that certain checks be done once school was in session?
Yes, I actually had, we had a discussion, and I want to be clear that I was comfortable with them taking the counts in July. I understood they were under a time constraint and they needed to do it, because I had cautioned them against taking the counts during July, that my preference was to wait until after summer, but it was my understanding through conversations with their traffic engineer that it was important that they get their submissions in as soon as possible. So they understood that I may require them to redo the traffic counts at a later date.
So then we can assume that spot checks are just redoing a traffic count in particular.
They may potentially go out and take one or two and come back to see if there's a problem, and then I would maybe have the opinion that you would have to go out and do all the counts over again.
I think we had 6 intersections, I believe, that were part of the study area.
You know what, I don't remember offhand.
Okay. Have you personally observed or taken any traffic counts at any of the study area intersections that were the subject?
No, I have not personally taken any
Okay.
traffic counts.
All right. You mentioned in your testimony, and I'll refer you back to this, I'm showing the witness Exhibit T3, which is the map, and I believe, these are mine. Okay. Those aren't yours. The witness has pointed to some notes that I've made on the exhibit. Are you familiar with some of the institutions that I'm going to name, like Shipley, Baldwin, Holy Child, Rosemont College, any of those? Are you familiar with those?
I have to admit, I went on to Google and put in school with the area to see what schools were in the area. I was not familiar with all the schools that were located around here.
Okay.
I knew there were a few, and I can see that there's some additional ones.
Well, just for the record, I've put on my notes, Holy Child, Rosemont College, Shipley, Baldwin School, Harcum Junior College, all within, let's say, a mile to a mile and a half of Villanova University, which is the farthest east, I guess, on your map. If you were aware of those, would you consider those close enough to be contributed?
I think that the information that I provided stands by itself and clearly shows that there's enough schools in the area. However, if you would like to amend it and include yours, I think that would be fine.
Thank you very much. How about if I wanted to amend it with Bryn Mawr Hospital?
Bryn Mawr Hospital likely operates on a 24/7. I don't think that you're going to see as much of an effect from Bryn Mawr Hospital as you would from a school that's no longer in session during the summer months.
I think I'll have you testify when we review Lankenau Hospital's application. We could strike that. And I think that's all I have. Thank you very much,
Okay,
Ms. Kaminsky.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edelson. Any questions from the Radnor Township taxpayers? Oh, I mean, from the Radnor Conservancy, sorry. Sorry. And Ms. Morgan, any questions? Questions, you mean?
Questions? Amy, are you aware of a recent change in that area of a road change, I guess they stopped certain turns, Radnor, Chester, and Conestoga, I believe it was, Mr. Rice? I mean, it was in all the papers. I believe that they recently, a week ago,
You gotta
stopped left turns.
You got to identify
Okay,
what
no.
you're referring to when you ask the question. So,
I'm not from the area, so I don't read the local papers.
Okay.
And I'm not, I had heard there was some restriction, but I don't know what intersection it was, a left turn or something?
It was a left turn, yes.
Okay.
And then the only comments I have is that I did my own school analysis, and I have some that I would add.
The purpose of the map was, if I could clarify, was
Okay.
just to show the traffic count should be done because there are many schools in the area. I don't think it
Yeah, I don't think it
matters if we
matters.
have more or
Oh, okay.
That there are
less.
more. The expert traffic engineer is suggesting to the other traffic engineer that they recount because there are enough schools in the area, be that 4 or 20, that it requires it.
And could I ask you, would you want Villanova to not be on Christmas break when those counts are done? Because I don't know when it
Oh,
is, but it might be
I will
quick.
know.
Oh, okay.
Because I do go online to check the universities and make sure that the nearby universities are not out of session.
Okay, good, because some of them I know let out real early in December. And then, the only question I had is, did you have any comment on the design of the long one-way road that's internal?
I did have one, there's going to be a need for a CELDO requirement because the road comes up to Newtown Road at less than 70 degrees. And the CELDO requires that it be set at a 90-degree angle or at the absolute minimum of a 70-degree angle to the road. And it looks to me that it's at 60 degrees. So there will need to be something done to that.
But in terms of the length of that road being one-way versus what we've discussed tonight on the length of, I'm calling it the Ridge Road. That's longer
wait,
than 800
What's the
feet.
question? I'm
Did
sorry.
you, on the horseshoe-shaped one-way road,
Okay.
you said you don't like roads longer than I believe it's 800 feet?
Cul-de-sacs.
Oh, cul-de-sacs.
Yes.
One-way roads, do you have an
The
opinion on?
the same thing could apply to those.
Can you,
Lengths beyond 1,000 feet, I probably would either request some kind of traffic calming or less distance because of the fact that motorists can speed on those roads.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Price? Okay, very good. All right, Mr. Schneider?
Thank you. Let's just start right there because it's easy and in our mind. Width of cartway is a form of traffic calming, isn't it?
The width of the cartway can be, yes.
Okay.
However, when there's no sidewalks present, the width of the cartway can be difficult for pedestrians to be on the road while there are vehicles traveling down the road. So
Pedestrian
a-
traffic is also traffic calming, isn't it?
I certainly would not consider pedestrians as a traffic calming element.
But do they calm traffic?
Pedestrians?
Yes. Does traffic slow down because of the existence of pedestrians?
I don't think that I would want to use
I'm not
a
asking that,
pedestrian.
I'm not asking whether you would use it or not. I'm just asking whether, in your observation, does traffic slow down because of
In
pedestrians?
my opinion, motorists do slow down when there are pedestrians adjacent to the road.
Thank you. Going backwards, you talked about the three-way stop at Radnor, at Newtown and Darby
Darby
Pale.
Paley.
Did you read Mr. Richardson's testimony about that?
I did.
Did you understand that they had, in fact, studied the option of a three-way stop sign and that it impeded the intersection instead of improving it?
Well, I knew it would cause some additional delay to the intersection. The level of delay, I don't know. I don't know how many seconds additional delay. I don't know what the reportables and non-reportables, those are things that you need to consider in those types of analysis, too.
Okay. And when you talked about reportables, you weren't talking about 5 reportable or crashes over a 3-year period. The correct way to say that is 5 reportable crashes a year for 3 consecutive years.
No, it's not.
That is not.
That is
Okay.
not correct.
It's any 5 over any 3-year period.
Correct.
Okay.
Wait a minute. It's 3 years of history, 5 crashes over a 12-month period. Thank you.
Yes. So
Sorry. Yes.
So it is 5 crashes a year over a 3-year period.
Of analysis.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, just quickly so I understand this, does Radnor have a 209 traffic program?
I'm sorry, do you mean an Act 209?
Act 209?
Traffic impact? No, they do not.
Okay. When you talk about the counts to increase, to look to see if the traffic, the background traffic, the existing traffic is greater, what does that do to the percentage of impact that comes from this development?
Could you repeat that question? I'm having a hard time.
If you did counts and you said, whoops,
Are you
it should be.
saying me personally, if I
No,
did traffic?
Hold on. She can only take down one.
No.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No.
Let him finish.
You're asking us to do additional counts. Let's say that our.
I'm asking you to recount.
Okay. And let's say those recounts show, because of whatever it is, higher volumes than were in our present study.
Okay.
What does that do with the percentage of our impact on the roads?
It could potentially reduce it, depending on where the counts are.
Okay.
And if the
It-
counts go down, then you have the opposite occurring.
Okay. But from the standpoint of the present study, all of our intersections are A and B, aren't they?
It remains to be seen for Radnor Chester.
For the present, from the present study, I said.
From what, the information that was provided in the first study, yes.
Okay. And just so I'm understanding what you're saying, you're not sure that there is anything that can be done at Radnor Chester because you've not looked at what the problem is or whether there is the available ground to do any improvements?
No, that's not what I said.
Okay, what did you say?
I said that there is a queue on that one, on the southbound approach, and the counts need to be, to take into consideration demand versus vehicles served. So based on the information that was in the traffic impact study, I was unable to come up with what improvements may help the situation, because according to the traffic impact study, it appears that it's at level of service A and B.
Okay. And
And-
you did indicate that one approach was constrained by two historic buildings. Which approach was that?
The southbound approach.
The one that you say queues?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. So at least that approach couldn't be widened.
It couldn't be widened, but it could be improved by redistributing the green time to that approach.
Okay. And that wouldn't involve expenditure of dollars. That would involve.
It could potentially, if it turns out that there were improvements that you could provide on the other approaches that would allow for you to reduce the green time for those approaches, they could be delivered to the other approach.
Okay. The connection between 5.4, I think it is, 5.4, 5.1, 5-1, and the Phase 3 road.
Okay.
You talked about bollard and pavers and things like that. Isn't the plan showing a driveway from the cul-de-sac into that lot?
I'm not sure what,
Okay. And a driveway from that lot also down to Darby Paoli, so it had alternative access?
I guess that's what the graphic that I'm looking at, it appears that that's what's going on, yes.
Okay. And there was testimony to that. Were you here for that?
No, I was not.
Okay. So if that then is access from both sides, in emergency situation, you could get through there, correct?
Correct.
And you're not suggesting that there be a condition to the plan that one of those accesses to that lot, which would then have alternative access, be removed and bollards put there? You're not suggesting that, are you?
I'm sorry, are you asking if Lot 5-1 should have access to Newtown Road through through that roadway and also directly to Darby Paoli?
I'm saying that the testimony is that it would, and I'm asking whether your testimony is you want one of those two accesses removed and bollards put.
No, that's not my testimony.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear that that's. Were you here for Mr. Fiorello's testimony about the length of the cul-de-sac and the option for, if that waiver isn't granted, the option for
This is my first night
compliant?
for attending.
Okay, did you read his testimony?
Was it the first night or this? I did read through everything. I did not, I'm not sure. Is it the first or second? First night?
First.
Can I look through just to refresh my mind? Yeah.
Yeah, I would suggest page 134 or 5,
Okay.
something in that.
Let's see if I highlighted it. 134? Okay, where at, what line? I'm not sure.
It's, when you go down, starting at line 15 on 134, and you go down through probably line 22 of 135.
Okay, can I just look at it to,
I'm just asking if you're familiar with it.
no.
Okay. So, okay. If you're
I would
not-
have to read through it if you wanted me to.
No, I'm just
Okay.
asking whether you were familiar with his potential fix for that issue if
Are
the
you sure
waiver
you're at the
isn't
right
granted.
place? Because I'm in the first hearing, and it's a discussion about, she's asking, can you do phase 1 first and forget the other phases and gift that
I'm in a
part?
hearing of Monday, September 30th. That's the first hearing.
I don't have it. Oh, there were 3 nights? Oh, no, I haven't read it.
Okay. Just so that the applicant understands, from where did you get the information that the bridge would be open by Thanksgiving?
From PennDOT, and I asked Mr. Norsini, the Public Works Director for Radnor Township.
Okay. Oh, did you read Mr. Richardson's testimony about the site distance from the shared driveway on Darby Paoli Road?
What, do you have a page that you could reference for me? I'm sure I read it. If you're going to ask me for a question, it might be,
Well, did you look at the pictures that were put into the record at that time in that testimony?
no.
Do you know whether he opined as to the length of site distance and the adequacy of it?
Can you point to the transcript?
I'm asking whether you know
No,
about it.
then
Okay,
no.
Okay, thank you. I think I understand from what Mr. Bola said, but your use of T3 is not to say that this property is unusually situated with respect to schools, is it?
I'm making no opinion as to whether or not that is typical or not typical, because I've not done any analysis.
Okay, so if you went the other side of the blue route and picked a piece of property, you don't know whether you'd have more or less schools closer and so forth?
That's correct.
Okay, you're just saying that with those schools that are closer,
No,
you'd like to see a
yes.
check?
Yes, knowing in my mind that I knew that this is a heavy university area, and there are quite a few schools around here, that was what was my concern back in July.
And the applicant did indicate to you that they would do those checks, is that correct?
Yes,
And
the applicant's engineer.
applicant's engineer, speaking on behalf of the applicant.
There you go.
And that up until tonight, when we now hear a date for opening the bridge, the idea was always to wait until after the bridge was open.
Well, before the bridge was closed, we were going to be doing the count sometime in September.
Right?
And then the bridge was closed, so we had to put off those traffic counts. So, yes,
Okay.
now.
So the applicant hasn't refused to do anything in a timely manner that way?
The applicant has not refused.
Okay. Your 601 PennDOT document dated 9/13/2013, you're not suggesting that the applicant should have applied that in doing its traffic study, right?
No, I'm not.
Okay. And I guess my last question to you is, the issues that you're raising as to looking at these items, two parts. First of all, are you suggesting that a condition that these be reviewed at land development plan or subdivision plan, because this really isn't a land development, would be what you're looking for?
Can I confer with counsel?
I guess I don't have a problem with that.
Is that okay?
If Mr. Snyder doesn't have a problem, the hearing officer doesn't have.
Okay. Typically, it becomes a condition on the, when you're in this type of a process.
And
So in other words, there might be a condition imposed.
It could be a
if-
condition, and I would find that acceptable.
If I approve of the plan, there would be a condition imposed that at land development, they comply with your request 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or something.
Yes,
Okay, I
that would be
understand.
my recommendation.
Okay. And you are not suggesting a condition of any specific improvement, off-site improvement be imposed on the applicant, are you?
Why, that would be against the MPC. No, I am not.
Thank you.
All right, any redirect, Mr. Rice?
No.
All right, very good. Okay, thank you, Ms. Kaminsky.
That's it?
Do you have any further witnesses for this evening?
Not for tonight.
Okay. Shortly, we'll take a break, but I want to get a sense of what we've got lined up here yet tonight. The Conservancy, you're going to make a presentation, sir?
Ready?
Okay. And Ms. Morgan, I think, is she here? I had thought Ms. Morgan was going to present a witness too tonight.
Her plans are still here, so I assume she's still here.
Okay. Well, we don't, ma'am, you don't have to check right now. I was just trying to do it at a convenient moment.
She's here.
All right. Could you ask her to come in?
Mr. Hero, is this bill intended for public comment?
Well, I'll get to that shortly. Yes, there will be, but Ms. Morgan, I'm just trying to get a sense of what we have lined up for this evening. Are you going to testify on your own behalf, or do you have any witnesses?
I do not have any witnesses, and I thought that this would go longer.
Okay.
That's fine, and can I, if I want to add something, can I go through public comment as well? Because I am just one person.
I don't understand what you just asked.
Well, in terms of a presentation.
Excuse me. Can you come up here? I can't hear.
Do I have a presentation, you mean?
Yes. I think we had talked about.
Sure, absolutely.
Well, no, wait, ma'am. I don't want you, could you come forward again? I don't want you to do it right now. We're going to take a short break.
Okay.
I'm trying to get a sense of what we've got lined up.
Okay.
Are you prepared to do whatever it is you were going to do as a party to this matter
Yes,
this
I
evening?
would like to do a 10-minute presentation.
Okay, so we will...
Maybe 12 minutes.
We'll take you then when we're done with the Radnor Conservancy. Ms. Price, we didn't have you prepared to present anything. Are you prepared to testify on your own behalf? No, not this evening. Okay. Then what we will do, we're going to shortly take a 5-minute break. What we will do is we will take the testimony from the Conservancy, we will take the presentation and testimony from Ms. Morgan, and we will open up for public comment of anyone that's here this evening, and take those public comments this evening before we conclude.
Ms.
Right.
Bowl, I have just one question on that. It comes from Ms. Price's response, knowing that I have to be prepared next time for Wheeler and for any rebuttal, and we also have another traffic expert coming. Is Mrs. Price saying she does not have any witnesses and doesn't intend any, or is she saying that she doesn't have any tonight?
You
Okay.
will not.
Okay.
Will you be a witness? Okay, but you're not prepared to do that this evening? No. Okay, do you understand?
Yeah, I guess I do, although
Okay.
I'm not sure why.
Well, it's okay. We had not asked Ms. Price to prep for tonight. We had gone as far as Ms. Morgan,
Okay.
because we thought there was going to be another witness from Mr. Edelson.
Okay.
So what we're going to do is we're going to take a 5-minute break now. We'll come back and we'll go in the order as I've already discussed, and we'll get as far as we can go tonight, and then we'll announce what we'll do next time.
Thank you.
Very good. All right, let's resume the hearing, and I see Mr. Toomey from the Radnor Conservancy is raring to go and up at the mic. So, Mr. Toomey, you are here, you and Ms. Kreitler have been the representatives of the Radnor Conservancy during these hearings. Could I have your email address?
Yes. It's DG Toom, Toom, 813 @AOL.com.
Very good. All right, sir, and you're here to testify as a party on behalf of the Conservancy. Would you be sworn, please?
I
Sir, you do solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
do.
And would you state your name for the record? please?
Yes, my name is David C. Toomey, Toomey. I live at 332 Walnut Avenue in Wayne, and I'm the president of the Radnor Conservancy, and I'm here to testify, make a statement on behalf of the Conservancy.
Very good.
I have a longer written statement, if I may, which I'd like to offer as RC1, but my statement, my testimony, I'm sure you'll be glad to hear, will be shorter than the written statement.
Always glad to hear that, sir.
So, if I may do that, and
If you'd be so kind as to hand two up here when you can.
I will.
Great.
There you go. Okay, and, okay, yeah, go ahead, sure.
Very good, thank you, sir. It's RC1, you gotta write that in.
In summary, Mr. Bolo, the Conservancy supports the proposed use of density modification to develop this property, with, however, a requested condition on the plan with respect to 6 lots which overlook the so-called rye field or parcel C, which is, if I may, this area right here on the first page of, what is this? M14?
It should be MT16.
With respect to the overall plan in general, the Conservancy has long advocated the use of density modification. We have, at an earlier time, 2 or 3 years ago, advocated amendment to the zoning code in the township to allow a density modification as of right, not just as a conditional use, in order to expedite the use of density modification. Density modification allows the preservation of important environmental and ecological features, including view sheds, that could be swallowed up by a by-right development. And that is the virtue of this plan. This applicant has the right, under the zoning law, to build at least 139 homes on 2-acre lots, sprinkling them over the entire property. We don't doubt that it would be to his financial advantage to do that. Instead, he proposes to build only half as many homes, 67 if the township buys tracts A, B, and C, and only 88 if the township does not. As a result, under this plan, whether it's the 88 plan or the 67 plan, woods are protected, runoffs to streams are prevented, and significant acreage will be left as open space. The Conservancy's goal of environmental protection is thus met by this plan, and we support it for that reason. We recognize that there are some here who have suggested a different design. We take no position on that. If another design provided the equivalent amount of environmental protection, we might well support that as well. But the only engineered plan that you have before you at this time is this one, and it does meet our overall goals. Having said that, however, we propose conditions to the plan with respect to 6 lots which overlook the rye field. And I have to apologize that FedEx and I miscommunicated today,
and I therefore have only 4 copies of some pictures which I would like to use as exhibits, if I may.
Okay.
John, could you share that? And mark this RC2.
Yes, sir?
Please ignore these arrows that are here. I'll put this down here so that people can see what I'm talking about. The arrows are of no purpose here. It is only to show the property as that we're talking about. These pictures were put together, were taken from Darby Paoli Road near the intersection of Newtown Road. And as you can see, it's quite a gorgeous piece of property.
And that is a photograph of the rye field from that location?
That is
Okay.
correct. It is
It's RC2 it's been
RC2,
referred to.
yes. It is part of the area described in the Township's 1988 Comprehensive Plan as, quote, the Darby Paoli Road corridor, and which was described in that plan as, quote, a scenic road worth protecting. Similarly, the Township's 1992 Open Space Plan called for that corridor to be preserved from development. And the Township Open Space Committee voted as recently as October 15 of this year, unanimously, that any development near the rye field achieve a maximum protection for the rye field viewshed that you're seeing there. As presently plotted by the applicant, that viewshed will be severely compromised. The lots we're talking about are these 6 lots that appear adjacent to the rye field. And they're described as 3, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, right here. They are directly along the ridge line that looks down on the road from which these pictures were taken. They're hard to see on this exhibit, so we made another copy of this, which I'll mark as RC3. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we outlined them here. Oops, got it backward. Excuse me. Outlined them here as 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And if you can imagine, this goes downhill towards the corner of Newtown Road and Darby Paoli Road. The final exhibit, which I'll mark as, again, I apologize for only having 3 copies, is a composite picture, also taken from, from Darby Paoli Road. Yes, it's R4.
RC4.
RC4, I'm sorry.
That's right.
And here what we've done is to superimpose on the picture the locations of lot 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, and 37 that we referred to before. And I draw your particular attention to the woods at 32 and 33. And as we understand it, those woods will be taken down in order to accommodate putting the homes on 32 and 33. Excuse me. the homes on 32, 33, 34, and 35 will be completely visible from the road. The homes 36 and 37 will be farther back. The roof lines will be seen from the road at least, and perhaps also some of the second floors. In that regard, excuse me, got my pages mixed up here a little bit. In short, the beauty of that viewshed will be severely compromised by the building of the homes that I'm describing. And even though it has been a priority in the plans of the township for 25 years that this area should remain unspoiled for development. For that reason, we propose that the approval of this application be subject to the following conditions. First, that lots C2 through C5 be moved entirely back so that homes built on them cannot be seen from Darby Paoli Road.
Let me just take that. Would that be 3-2 through 3-5?
Yes, I meant 3-2 through 3-5, yes. Second, that the area of those lots be included in the 15% open space set aside. And third, that lots C6 and lots C6 and C7 either be moved or that setbacks be adjusted and height restrictions be imposed so that the homes are not visible above the ridge. In that regard, the Planning Commission, in recommending approval of this application, conditioned that approval on relocating lots 3-2 through 3-5 and limiting roof heights on homes on C6 and C7 to 35 feet above grade. We urge you to adopt the conditions we propose and that the Planning Commission adopted when you make your decision. Thank you very much, and I offer the exhibits that have been marked.
Thank you. Any objection to the exhibits? No. All right, they'll be received. May I have the two photographs that are not up here yet? And I understand for the court
Do you want
reporter, you
these?
don't have extra copies. She doesn't need the extra copies. Thank you. No, I have enough now. Yeah. Just give me a minute. I want to look at these a little bit closer.
Right.
Okay. Now, sir, you're going to be subjected to rigid cross-examination. Mr.
I
Rice,
hope
do you-
I'm prepared.
Mr. Rice, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Well, that wasn't so rigid. Mr. Edelson?
No, I don't, no question.
All right, Ms. Morgan? Any question? Ms. Morgan?
Is it my turn for public comment?
No, no, questions of this witness?
Actually, I do. Do I have to approach?
Yes. You sure you have questions? Okay. All right, now we're going to have to get you both mic'd in some fashion. So,
Hello. Mr. Toomey.
Should I go down here?
either one works, yeah. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
I would like to know where the Conservancy would take the open space allocation from on this, what your ideas are on that. It's clearly marked the common open space. If you could use this.
Well, this particular area is open space in the sense that nothing is to be built on it. It is proposed to be sold to the township, although that's not finalized quite yet. But no plan that I know of, including the plan of the applicant, would put any houses down on the field except those that I've referred to along the ridge.
No, I don't think that's my question. What I'm saying is, you did a beautiful representation of the photos. I think we followed you very clearly. I'm curious, because you asked that the building lots be moved back, where would the common open space, this equals 15.04%, this common open space. Where would you propose it be shifted?
We're not land planners. We would leave that to people who know more about land planning than we do. What we are saying, we are interested in environmental aspects of the viewshed, and we are proposing those protections, and would leave it to people more knowledgeable than us to decide where the space, what would be moved.
So you don't have a preference? You haven't looked at your preference?
We don't have a preference at all.
Okay.
There is a considerable amount of land that is not to be built on at this time. So there's land to accommodate these lots elsewhere, but we're not going to try and dictate where they go.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Ms. Price, any questions? Very good. Mr. Snyder?
Yes, I do have a few questions. Let me just start by asking whether it is the understanding of the Conservancy that if the density modification approval is not granted or is granted in a way that the applicant does not accept it, that the applicant has the right to by right development of the rye field.
Yes.
And have you been involved, or were you at the meeting on Monday night with respect to the township's acquisition of the rye field?
Yes, I was there. I did not testify.
Have you had a chance to review the agreement of sale between the township and the applicant?
Only very summarily. I can't really say I've read it enough to be able to speak knowledgeably about it.
Okay. And are you familiar with the provision of that ordinance, that agreement that provides that if the applicant does not get an approval of its lots significantly is located, that it can terminate the agreement with the township?
Yes.
And are you familiar with the alternate plan for the development of that cul-de-sac?
The 88?
Yes.
Yes, I am.
Okay. So I'm trying to understand the Conservancy's position. Is the Conservancy's position that it wants those 6 lots moved, and if the applicant doesn't want to move them, then it's okay that the applicant would, in the alternative, build the 25 lots?
That's not my understanding, but that may be the case.
What is on MT16, what is between the applicant's lots and the portion of the rye field to be bought by the township?
You're referring to the buffer?
Yes.
Yeah, there is a, I think, 100-foot wide buffer that is on the northwest, I guess, of the homes that are to be built there.
Okay. And on the original plan, the one that was originally filed, which you're, what am I looking at here? Is that
I think that's
2?
I think that's 3.
3? The squiggly line, did you notice what that said as well?
Well, it's my understanding that that's essentially where the buffer is going to be.
And what does it indicate would be there?
Well, it says area of proposed landscape screen, but our concern is that it's downhill from where those houses will be built, so that the screen would be below what the houses, and that therefore you could see the houses notwithstanding the screen.
And just so that I understand your position, somebody that bought a house at 3.4 or 3.3, your position is that they shouldn't have the ability to enjoy the view shed of the rye field?
Well, certainly it'd be a nice thing to have, but that's one or two people. We're trying to advocate for everybody who drives by there, including all the rest of the people in the township. So yes, if what you're saying is that it's valuable, sure it's valuable, but it's valuable to a handful of people against the value of all the rest of the people in the township.
And have you sought to acquire the right to, the ability to take that right of the people that own and would live on the land, the right to see the rye field? Or are you just seeking to have it taken away?
We're seeking to have the approval of your plan conditioned on those lots not being built there.
And in what way, in your opinion, does that violate the ordinances of Radnor Township to locate those lots there?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Is it does it somehow violate the ordinances of Radnor Township to build lot 3, to build 3-3 or 3-4 where they're located?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. I have no other questions.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Toomey. Appreciate your testimony and that of the Conservancy. All right, now, we're going to move on to public comment, and we will take public comment from first Ms. Morgan, and then anyone else here in the room who would like to publicly comment. I wish also to announce at this point that if there's anyone else out there that wants to comment about the application, be prepared to do so at our next hearing on November 21st, Thursday, November 21st, a week from now, which begins at 6:30. That will be the public comment night. How to say this without being too maudlin. On November 26th, I'm scheduled to undergo serious surgery that will keep me out of work for 6 weeks. So I want to conclude this hearing before then. Our last scheduled night is the 21st. If we don't conclude on the 21st, we're going to conclude during the day of Friday, the 22nd. So that's why I want public comment to take place on the 21st, because I know that might be inconvenient for members of the public to come in to conclude the hearing. I suspect if we don't conclude the hearing on the 21st, it might be more, the testimony would be more from the applicant on the second conditional use on the Wheeler tract, which we could take without too much inconveniencing the public. So that's my plan at this point. I'm sorry about that, but I don't want to push this off for another 6 weeks if we don't get it in on the 21st. So that's how we're going to proceed. So please, if anyone else other than the people that are here tonight wish to publicly comment, please know that you should do so next Thursday night. All right, so sir, you'll be taken tonight.
Thank you.
We'll hear your public comment tonight. Very good. All right, Ms. Morgan?
As she approaches, just so that I understand, so I'm not interrupting at all, this is not testimony, this
not
is just
testimony, this is
comment.
public comment
Thank you.
at her request.
Yes, I wanted
Yes, be a little ma'am.
looser.
And I have public comment for the meeting.
Good, we'll take that too tonight. Great. Thank you.
Leslie Morgan, 12 Farm Road. Just a brief synopsis. I've been an advocate of the common open space on this application for Main Tract. I don't really have any hard opinions on the other two pieces. And it was music to my ears to hear Mr. Toomey ask for a special allocation. I can't agree with him more in one way and maybe disagree in another way, which is why I asked if he had a preference on where to take something from that's already laid out in order to get the 3 or 4 homes out of sightline from the intersection of Darby Paoli and Newtown Road. My approach to the common open space was a lot different. I studied 18 density modifications, and again, this is just comment, not testified, but what I found out was that in all of them, whatever the bias of the township and its residents that were most closely impacted were, that's where the common open space was allocated. Strangely enough, what happened with all of these 18 home developments was that in most of them, what we call is an emerald necklace was created. So an emerald necklace would take it from here all the way here, up here, because they wanted the view sheds in Radnor protected. They created this ordinance in a strong determination to hide the houses from the roads so that it was the commuters didn't see houses all over the place. And that's how the density modification was sort of born as what they called was their conservation modification. And so I started studying this, and I got very, almost emotionally attached, I think. And I noticed on this plan, for whatever reasons, I disagree strongly with the allocation on a lot of the areas, because none of them, it's a very large tract, none of them are grouped together to make a huge impact. And the township has worked with this particular developer and its family for a long time. I think it's been a mutually beneficial relationship up until now. And I know that it was known that the Darby Paoli and Newtown roads, through different open space manuals, as Mr. Toomey said, in 1991, I thought one was, in 2003, absolutely wanted that corner protected. And so that corner is between 16 and 31 acres through all the hearings, Mr. Bola. And it surprises me that it wasn't protected in the application. And so I looked back and I looked through all the files in Ward 3. This is Ward 3 in Radnor Township. Ward 3 is split in zoning. You took the zoning maps. And Ward 3 is mostly split into a 2-for-1, so 2 acres for 1 unit, or a 1-for-1. And what we found was that in the Inverray, Brook Farm, Round Hill, Ravenscliff, in all of them there was all these negotiations, like I don't want to put the common open space by the roadways, I don't want to dedicate extra than 15%, and in all of them, they not only dedicated much more than the 15% that was required, sometimes they dedicated up to 44% of the tract size. So in a Brook Farm application, I'm going to put that up. In a Brook Farm application, in this site that you're looking at right here, this site is about 70 to 80 acres. That's a 2-for-1, okay? So that was a farm. It had a beautiful view shed. It actually looks over, this road, Brook, looks over the back of what they call Ardrossan 1, which was developed with 10 to 15 acre sites. If I'm wrong a little on the acreage, don't kill me. But that was what was the large tract subdivision that was the first big development of the whole Ardrossan 750-acre tract. So when I started studying Brook Farm, I started asking around, and there was a lot of give and take because they didn't really want to give density modification for the 2-for-1 in Ward 3. They had done the 1-to-1s, and that had worked well. They didn't really want to do the 2-for-1, and how they got it, the developer, is they finally went up to something like 44 or 45% of common open space, and they dedicated actual land to the Radnor Township. They kept common open space all around. And so, since we're in public comment, and I may be boring some people, and I'm sorry, but this is my fight, I felt that this is 16 to 22 to 27 acres. I think we have now an agreement from I know we have an agreement from the applicant that he's willing to sell this piece to the township for $5.5 million. So, I'm not sure what that's going to, we have not signed it yet. The township, as I know, we're going through our own process there. In 18 density modification plans in Radnor Township, 4 which are within, if somebody had a very strong arm, could throw a baseball to these. They all dedicated common open space in the township's best interest, which it says in 280-90. It says it right there in the actual wording, that it will be in the interest of the township and where they would like it. And the first thing is aesthetically. So I think that we've said where we wanted it aesthetically, and that has been my sort of debate through the whole thing and my interest. And I thank you for tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. All right, sir, you come forward and identify yourself, please. Hello, sir.
Hi, good evening. Thank you. My name is Jim Schneller. I live in this ward.
Could you spell your last name, please?
James Schneller, Schnelleller.
Okay.
I live at the far northern edge of the ward. I've, however, utilized the area for my lifetime, much of that in Radnor and the Willows, especially.
What's your address, sir?
I'm sorry, 430 East Lancaster Avenue, apartment E25, St. David's.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, this is public comment. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
And I have had an opportunity to review this as well as to appreciate the entire terrain for many years. And also, I do much bicycle riding. And I am, if I may say, an observer of development patterns and of these so-called view sheds and the countryscape aspect as well, and other aspects that you'll hear about. I'm also a rather strong constitutionalist, and I've been known to stand up at township meetings and declare that rights granted to we citizens are not always being attended to. And I have stood for 5 years, perhaps a generous 4 years, at scattered opportunities to object to the open space policy that has slowly developed as more of a policy external to American democratism, and a policy that has become synonymous with Agenda 21 and other fairly well-known policies of the lessening of our American democratic principles at the expense of world domination. This is not the reason I'm standing here. However, the open space policy differs from township to township in this area, and I have complained that our township has been kind of a hotbed for what is naturally an inclination of many governments to keep recreation space open, but taking on a strong flavor of emphasis, contribution, and unseen and untransparent reasoning going on. And it's quite apparent in this process, but with much regret to all involved, that much has happened that's not known to the population at the same time as not in the interest of the population. And really, I can limit my comments to specifics without going into any more philosophy. I think that, however, a reason I contribute this and a reason that it supports a rethinking of this acquisition of land especially, and the allocation of land that is being acquired by the township, is that the township commissioners have a duty to uphold the Constitution. They have a duty to uphold American land as opposed to policies that would keep land green for ulterior motives. I'm glad that this, could I ask the number of this exhibit? I'll be referring to MT16, and I would like to next comment on a couple of people's observations. First of all is on the rye field, that being this aspect which is literally hoped to be maintained by our township, these hopefuls for their land acquisition, as a purely visual benefit. I don't think there's any environmental benefit because it is such a steep slope that in a rainstorm, it's absorbing far less a percentage of rainfall than would any developed land or comparable pieces of land. I also have to mention that at this township meeting that occurred Monday night, which was not a hearing, but at which many views were espoused, there's open plan to reforest land. And I think the hearing examiner should know, and perhaps should inquire at some point, what land is thought of appropriate for reforestation. That applies equally to the recent comments by the Conservancy that, who I much respect, and I've benefited from their work just by being a citizen here. However, their comments that homes would be very visible along the top of this ridge ignores the fact, and you can see it in the pictures, that there are woods behind the ridge. Now, a home jutting out of a prairie is a different story, perhaps, for many people. Frankly, a serious comment of mine is that if you drive down Darby Paley Road for its full length, there are beautiful homes jutting out, with woods or not, and that's part of the viewscape. Anyway, for these 6 soldiers here lined up at the top of the ridge, there's woods behind them. And I would hope that with the hearing examiner having the right to add conditions, 20 claimed that there's clearing of land proposed, I think it was for these 2 lots, and at the township meetings, in the past 2 meetings that this has been discussed, it wasn't clear whether the developer would just strip clear lots or not. But we have a newly enacted shade tree agenda ordinance that even before amendment has strict requirements for not only for replacement, but for not removing in the first place. And with all the scrutiny that's going into this development, I don't think there's any worry about strip clearing of lots. I know it's tough for developers. As far as usability of this land, I want to point this out to the examiner because nobody might. We have another tract designated as a Wheeler tract, and there's an existing township-owned tract here, Skunk Hollow, and a proposed purchase of the Quarry tract, I believe it's called, right here. These 2 and this rye field are extremely questionable as to their use for the public. The rye field, if it's purely a viewscape, I don't see how the township has even looked at it, even as part of the 15% or otherwise, would they be looking at it, because it's literally a view for anyone sitting there of 2 heavily used commuter roads. And I'm sorry I keep digressing, but in the matter of view sheds, is our township interested at all in keeping a visage of an open prairie for what is literally 50% commuters, and that's probably over 60% commuters during rush hours? So where is the real benefit other than a purely tasteful matter for a small segment of the population? That aside, I wanted to comment also on the use. Now, you, sir, are permitted to allow implements, and there is an encouragement in the law to encourage conservation, land development, and to encourage attractive arrangements, this sort of language. And I really think that had the developer not been involved in these discussions over so much time, that a real by right, other than being an unknown to us, we're talking about would have a better benefit. I'll get more to that later. However, I'm quite certain from the fact that these are sought to be acquired, these 2 south of Darby Paley. And by the way, open space is, as a matter of law, required to not be separated by any busy roads. This is a commuter road, intensely dangerous for anyone walking. I see no plans for a crosswalk, and nobody would want to, because my other point is that if they have an interest in a creek bed trail, anyone using a creek bed trail is going to be subjected to unbelievably loud traffic levels of noise. At this point, the creek diverts behind the willows, and that's why the willows is all the better a type of parkland. But when we're talking about expenditures and for the price values that they're talking about for a noisy creek bed where the noise reverberates from the ravine sides, I question it highly. And I question the fact that it's worth anything approaching $1 million for the southern tract, because I know if developers have tried to, or attempted in part to build there. I'd like to note also that while the developer hasn't been required or decided to change a heck of a lot, because all they've done with the smaller number of houses, Plan B, is to eliminate the lots on this side of that cul-de-sac. The land appears to not be usable anyway. So if that's not a result of long-going negotiations, it's also a steep slope. It could be quite reduced in value in the first place. I'd like to remind everyone involved and the decision makers naturally that the land acquisition thus appears to be an acquisition really for its own sake. I regret deeply that it's involved at all, and I certainly regret the fact that it's not decided. I think it was something that should have been decided before this event ever took place, before your decision. I suppose the timing is I hope you'll have a quick recuperation, so I'll be entirely correct.
Thank you.
Now, a couple more things about the ordinance. I'd clarify what I just said 5 or 6 times is that I would hope you wouldn't rely on the by right plan as being a by right plan. And I note that you have great leeway to decide on the merits, and the Board of Commissioners and the township in general has a lot of merits to look at along the road. But any approval at this point is going to inherently, and I would hope not expressly, involve a rubber stamp for the purchase of this land. And I do have strong beliefs that the purchase of the land is largely unconstitutional. Finally, as to traffic, I noted there were a couple of comments. Development equals children. And there have been comments made, and you may expect some next week, concerning the fact that the buses, the traffic generated by school day trips, is something to be objected to. I don't think 90% of people here object to more children in the township, and the schools have every interest in them. Also, you may have noted that I think there are at least 5 of these density modifications that have occurred in the local area. They've already created very large, in fact, one of them was just mentioned to be dedicated. I think there's some other dedicated land too. Some of it also is ravine land. This is quite wonderful. And the fact is Radnor was on the ball and picked these up during developments, got some of it dedicated, but with the realities of what open space implies, this philosophy implies, I think it has no place in our government. And it just taints the entire matter. Likewise, this particular matter has affected every aspect of the proceedings. Finally, I note that an inclusion of any land in the 15% in any way other than the absolute open space, as I just heard mentioned, would be outside of the intent of the law. Likewise, I think any pressuring, any attempts to sway any decisions by way of saying that a cash purchase has caused this decision holds no merit. And I likewise object to the fact that any cash decision would have affected what's being presented as fact all along the way. I believe that's all I have to say. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. All right. Young lady from the League of Women Voters. Thank you so much. Do you have an extra copy for our court reporter, please?
Yes, I'm sorry, you're supposed to.
Right out of your hand there, Mr. Edelson. Please identify yourself, please.
Yes, good evening. I'm Barbara Schradenbach. As Vice President of the League of Women Voters,
Ma'am, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Could you spell your last name?
yes, it's SCHRAUDENBACH.
Very good, thank you.
As Vice President of the League of Women Voters of Radnor Township, I am requesting that Roberta Winters, President of the League, or her designee, that's me this evening, be given standing in this conditional hearing, a conditional use hearing. The League of Women Voters, LWV, at the state and local levels has studied land use issues for decades. Such study and consensus building result in the adoption of positions from which the LWV advocates. The following comments are rendered by the LWV of Radnor to serve our community, our local community, as we, 1, continue to monitor and examine all activities in the township pertaining to zoning, planning, transfer, and acquisition of land. 2, to support the protection of open space and recreational lands, and 3, to take action when appropriate. On behalf of the League, I wish to commend all of our elected and appointed officials for the guidance of the township through the challenging process of land development, specifically of the Ardrossan estate. The agreement to obtain an outside master and to provide hearings for interested stakeholders allows for an optimum forum for informed civic participation. We are optimistic that the collaborative outcome of these open discussions will lead to a resolution that will protect both the rights of the property owner and the public's desire to protect open space and safeguard sensitive environmental communities. The League recognizes the right under public code and law for negotiations to occur in these matters behind closed doors. We also trust that prior to any decision-making, a discussion of significant issues will be aired for the public. Further, the League is aware that the current process is but the first step in a lengthy sequence as mandated by regulatory procedure. We are most appreciative of the opportunity to address you this evening and will continue to be involved as events unfold.
Very good.
But there's more. Okay. As the designee of the League of Women Voters of Radnor, I, Barbara Schradenbach, offer the following comments, because we wanted these to be heard, as you weigh the issues before you. We believe that the Radnor Comprehensive Land Use Plan embodies the vision of Radnor residents and provides guidance for your decision-making. Of particular relevance is one of the 2 goals under Section 6, Open Space and Recreation. Protect and enhance the character of the township through the acquisition and protection of open space. That's page 6.1. This goal is followed by specific objectives that speak to this item. Continue to acquire, protect, and preserve open space in the township. Coordinate these efforts with protection and enhancement of natural resources. Assess various methods of acquiring land or interest in land for the purpose of conserving open space, page 6.1. Create non-motorized linkages between recreation and open space facilities. Township residents, businesses, and schools between these facilities themselves. Create linkages to recreational trail systems, page 6.2. This document further speaks to the importance of open space in the relationship to environmental resources in such areas as stormwater management, urban area greening, riparian buffer reestablishment, and the reforestation projects. Even the visual enjoyment, open space was noted as an important and unique attribute that contributes to the charm and character of our township, page 15. Combining open space with environment and natural resources was one of the considerations of the stakeholders of the Comprehensive Land Use Plan. On reading the document, the connections between these areas are evident. Here is the Section 2, Environment and Natural Resources Goal. Protect the township's vital environmental values, including water resources, wetlands, floodplains, and riparian areas, woodlands, and important habitat areas, balancing the needs of development with environmental values. And that's page 2.1. This in turn is followed by several objectives, the two being direct development to areas of minimum environmental sensitivity, prohibit development in areas of heightened sensitivity and value, such as wetlands, floodplains, riparian zones, and steep slopes, page 2.1. Work to preserve remaining open spaces in the township using all direct means such as acquisition, as well as less direct regulatory programs. Prioritize those open spaces taking into account factors such as proximity to wildlife habitats and forage areas, aesthetic values, and water resource values, and other factors relating to landscape ecology management. The League appreciates the opportunity to reinforce several of the goals and objectives of the comprehensive land use plan. We value the work you do and trust you will make the right decision for our township. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, before you leave, ma'am, before you leave, you've requested party status. Is there any objection?
No objection.
Okay,
I'm afraid.
very good. Thank you.
Mr. Snyder, do you have an objection?
How do you object to apple pie?
Well, you could try to.
Well, honestly, I'm not sure from anything that I heard that there was anything that was relevant to the issues involved in front of you as opposed to the bigger issues of open space acquisition and comprehensive planning. But be that as it may, I trust that the League of Women Voters are properly motivated and will be a good party.
Very good. They will be received as a party. All right, anyone else in the room wish to publicly comment this evening? Okay, that means we're going to end early, which is good for us tonight, but I'd like to get as much in. So, again, keep in mind, we're going to really try to get as much in next Thursday as we can. We might be a little bit later than usual.
Did you want to start a half hour earlier? I mean, I just offering,
Yeah,
just asking, I'm
No,
not
I think I'd rather, the closer I get to rush hour coming over here,
the worst.
yeah, I mean, I just have to leave a half hour earlier to get here at 6. So I think 6:30 works. We may go beyond 10. You know, we'll just get a feel for how far we are that night. I really just want to make sure I get all the members of the public who wish to comment to do so next Thursday night. I want to hear from them. So at this point in time, we will conclude the hearing this evening, and we will resume it at 6:30 p.m. on Thursday, the 21st. Thank you all for your participation.
Mr. Balla, can, just for one brief moment, let's talk about the 21st, though.
Let's go off the record,
Okay, you have public comment,
right?
you have a traffic engineer that is coming in. There was another, we don't have any other witness other than that from your side?
That's right. That's what I understand. There's one more
Okay.
witness from Mr.
Yeah, I may have one other witness.
Okay.
I haven't decided yet.
And I have 2 rebuttals.
Okay.
And then we have, it would be really nice for the record, for the sake of the people who have been involved in this all the time, if we can try and get through that part of it and just right now plan on the fact that on Friday at 10, we'll do Wheeler.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's
one
my
of-
intent. You know, if it looks like we'll be out of here at 11 or 11:15, you know, we can all live with that for one night.
Okay,
So-
I'm just talking about bringing witnesses for Wheeler. I've got to bring different
Yeah,
witnesses.
Yeah, I understand, and I'm sorry to create this additional burden in that regard, but I would suggest that you bring them. I recognize that's an additional expense possibly. I'd like to get them all in on the 21st.
Okay.
I mean, I hear you.
Okay.
Okay? Okay, once again, thank you all.